The bids are in. The gavel has dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right. This is WineBid's podcast. They did all things wine value, wine retail, wine auctions, and just wine. With you as always, I am Jeff McGurn on WineBid's marketing team. And of course, with me is my compatriot, the black belt of Beaujolais. That is right. Beaujolais Nouveau. Sorry, the black belt of Beaujolais Nouveau.
That's about
Paul
where my
Walker,
expertise
our wine expert. That's right.
It begins and ends with Beaujolais Nouveau. Beaujolais. Can't even say it.
Yeah, Paul. Funny thing, if you ever see Paul in person, he loves to do Beaujolais Nouveau type tastings and Beaujolais Nouveau pairings. Big thing.
I actually aged them for 10 to 15 years, and then I opened them. So
and how are they, Paul? How are your 10 to 15-year-old?
I'm starting a new trend on WineBid by selling Nouveau Beaujolais.
Actually,
years after its release.
Let's make that a thing. I actually have a bottle of Beaujolais Nouveau in my
Beaujolais. It's
cellar.
Beaujolais, not Beaujolais. That would be appropriate for Halloween, actually. Beaujolais, which I think probably has been used in various ways in marketing for restaurants and wine bars. Beaujolais Nouveau, but it's Beaujolais actually. It's not like bougie, like people say bourgeois, which is another thing you could use, I guess, for Halloween marketing. Anyway, what are we talking about? Let's talk about.
We're going to talk about French wine. Okay. In the auction this week, you're an expert on, and
let me make a couple of disclaimers. One, I'm not an expert. Two, we have many wines that we love to try and talk to. I mean, we do waste a lot of time talking about nonsense like we were just doing, but the fact is there are many wines added to auction throughout the week. Most of the wines are scheduled by Sunday and Monday, but if you're looking for something specific, don't forget to check your favorites later in the week. And also that we have a lot of, picks that we don't actually get to mention in the podcast. And we have links to those on the blog page, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And I would just like to note that while, just to add to that, Paul is absolutely correct with the exception of we don't add anything from Chapelet. We don't add anything from Dellinger, Carlisle, Turley, Ridge. Like all that, it's either added on Sunday, but if you don't see it Sunday, don't even look in your favorites. And if it is in your favorites, it's probably a glitch. You just leave it be. Just leave it be.
Oh, boy.
Okay? Or Pride or anything that's a good deal.
You're missing out. You're missing out on Jeff a lot of good deals because some of the wines that you mentioned earlier in our previous episode, I noticed already have bids, so you're behind.
I am behind this week.
Or 97 Pritchard Hill already has a bid. I checked. So
some of them might. Does it? Some of them might be. But see, that is how fast the finely hammered effect works. Okay, so I'm going to start off today. We're in France. Well, we're not in France. We might be in France. You have no idea. This could be France right behind me. Look at the the French countryside is
curtain
behind
and curtain rod doesn't look like a French curtain and curtain rod in the background.
Are you kidding me? Well, I brought it from the United States. I brought it from Target, which is how you pronounce Target in France.
Oh boy!
Actually, I have no idea where that came from. But let's talk Alsatian wine. Let's talk. Well, we're going to start in Alsace this week.
All right, let me guess. You're
going there's I have to mention like half of the wine coming into auction is in Umbrecht.
The coolest bottle though in this week is the Hugel Vendange Tardive Magnum.
Yes,
it's about as tall as a 5-year-old. It's this incredibly long bottle, and
I saw that.
It's fantastic. It's probably drinking great. 96.
It already has a bid.
Late harvest. Yeah, it's got a bid at $81.
81, which is a great number when there's 19 in front of it. But so there's a ton of Zin Umbrecht. I'm going to mention it. Honestly, it does not benefit me to mention it because I would normally go in and bid on all this stuff. There's a bunch of cool stuff from the 90s. Although I know you hate Gewürztraminer, I love Gewürztraminer, and I don't know.
I'm not a huge fan. I'll just say of dry Alsatian Gewürztraminer. I like Italian Gewürztraminer. I like late harvest stuff. It's good.
No, I know you love.
But I don't know. You
have a nice sweet Riesling from.
I prefer. Let's just say I prefer Gewürz from other parts of the world.
You like
especially northern Italy.
You love yourself some Kung Fu Girl.
And I will say there is some great Northern Italian white wine, but we're not talking about.
They're
just trying to get through Alsace, for God's sakes. Also, the other one I'll mention is the 94 Weinbach, since Jeff's going to list a whole bunch.
100%. I was going to mention the Weinbach. It's
the 94 specifically, the Schlossberg. We don't see this particular vineyard that often, and so I was excited. We see the Cuvée Mille and the other wines fairly often, but not the Schlossberg. Cuvée St. Catherine. So anyway, those are my picks from Alsace, and I'll let Jeff run his mouth for the next.
Did you notice all the Weinbachs had bids, which I thought was really
I'm not surprised. Well, because they're older, right? They're older and they're rare. So
I feel like the one that I was actually really interested in was the Muscat. I mean, I know that it comes along more than the Cuvée St. Catherine. I mean, that's one I was interested in as well. But I think it's cool to see the Muscat come along. And then the only other one that I really was watching in Alsace is the 01 Marcel Dice Altenberg Bergheim Grand Vin for $70. I thought that one was probably
it's Altenberg. I didn't see that actually.
Yeah, let's jump over to Champagne.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's very cool.
That's a really cool one. And I mean, I still feel like Alsace, as white wine goes, represents a tremendous value. Like the top end stuff is still under $100 oftentimes, right? So let's talk Champagne. One that I thought was interesting was this 08 Bollinger Blanc de Noir Vieille Français.
Yeah, it's a Vieille Française.
Française, $1,700.
That's their super rare cuvée. It's not made in every vintage. It's only certain vintages.
It's made in space or something.
100% Pinot Noir. No, it's serious wine. It's really serious wine.
Gotta be super serious. I mean, this is the first time we've seen an 08. 08 is a serious vintage, obviously. It's
amazing. Well, did you see that this was disgorged in 2020? So it's held back obviously by the winery. It's only released in certain vintages, and it's a really big deal.
So I'm really curious to see where this one lands. If it ends up coming down off of the 1,700 mark, if it ends up going up, what's your prediction? We've got 10 trackers already. Do you think this is going to sell? Do you think there's going to be bidding on this? Where do you think it's going to?
I'd have to look at the history. I mean, it hasn't been out for that long. It's only been out for a couple of years, if that. I mean, disgorged in 2020. I don't know when it was actually released, so it might have only been released, recently. But I have no idea. That's it's has it sold for this before? No, we've never sold it before. So it's probably only been out for a short amount of time. My prediction is it would not get bid up from that. I could be completely wrong.
So you think it'll sell at the 17 mark?
Yeah. I mean, again, if there are external
don't be wishy-washy. Don't be wishy-washy.
There's external auction data for this wine going back to last year, and the prices are all over the map. So they're anywhere from like $1,500 to $2,000. So it's right in the spot, I think, as to where it,
By the way, the other name we have for Paul, he's the Nostradamus of the Côte Nuit, just because he's so good at predicting what happens in the wine business. So whatever he says, it's almost guaranteed to happen. Let's talk about one of my perennial favorites, and it holds a special place in my heart, this 02 Piper Hedsich Rare. I think it was the first Tête de Cuvée one of the first Tête de Cuvées I ever drank, if not the first Tête de Cuvée I ever drank. And I love it. Great vintage 02. And I enjoy that bottle. It is very ostentatious.
When's the last time you had it? I'm curious, actually.
I had it
these are, that's already 20 years old. So I'm curious.
I had it 4 years ago. And it was still good. I mean, look, it was, it's stored well. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed that.
I haven't had that wine in a while.
The 18 Marguerite Coteau Champenois Ambonnet Chardonnay for $75, I had on my list to watch. And then the 15 Pinot Noir from the same producer for $70. I thought those were really interesting to see.
Yeah, we see Coteau Champenois wines from time to time. I feel like it's a little bit of a specialized, not necessarily that collectible, but there's definitely a following for these wines just because they're rare. Obviously, it's still wine. They're not sparkling.
Correct. Right.
Not obviously, but in this case, they are. And I'm not familiar with the Margay. Well, I don't really know the champagnes. I flagged the 14 rosé.
I flagged that too, which has 3 bids on it.
I have had the sparkling wines from Margay, and they're very, very good, but the prices are creeping up, just like a lot of other things that were in this price category. So I would go after these now while you get the chance, especially 14.
They're creeping up today. We're literally watching it.
Yeah, exactly. The
3 bids.
Rosé has bids at 71.
That could end up above $100.
Yeah, that's true. If it's got bids this early in the week.
I also jotted down this multi-vintage Georges Laval Brut Nature Premier Cru Cumeris, which has 1 bid, taking it from $85 to $86 US.
Yeah, these wines are very good, and also not necessarily. I mean, they're around. They're not impossible to find. I noticed that I flagged that one as well. Interestingly, there's more and more data, available for these wines. So the disgorgement dates are on the back labels, as well as codes that signify the base vintage or the actual entire vintage of the wine. In this case, 19, I believe, is the vintage, 2019, and disgorgement 2021. So helpful to have that information. And Brut Nature, I believe, means that it's non-dosage, so there's no sugar added to it. And yeah, it's, low alcohol, 12.7. Anyway, delicious wines, and not also going up in price, just like we were talking about. So
2000 Ploys Jacquemart Lycée d'Arborville Brut. I'm butchered that for $125. And then the 14 Salmon Special Club Rosé de Saint-Gé for $125. What did I miss?
I didn't see that either, actually. That's pretty cool. Special Club from Saint. I didn't see that line.
Boom. I just pen dropped. I would drop my mic, but I don't want to break it right in the middle of a podcast. Also, we're not done yet. But that's kind of a mic drop moment when I'm picking out champagne that the expert on wine here, especially an expert in champagne, has not.
Oh, please.
Not noticed.
Far from it.
That's like the biggest compliment is when you're like, oh, I didn't notice that one. That's great. Like that's the biggest, like it warms the cockles of my heart. Stuff like that.
Good to know. I'm glad that was, your condition.
Yeah.
In any event, let's see. Christophe Mignon, Brut Nature, another zero dosage wine, ADN de Meunier. I don't know what that means. Maybe it's made out of 100% Pinot Meunier. And it caught my eye because it was $40 and it's a small production wine, not totally expensive. The Jacques Lassagne wines look enticing. There's some little Jacques Salas, which seems to find its way in almost every week. But the rosés in this week, which you don't see too often in that gorgeous frosted bottle, it's like $7.95. There's a Crude 167th edition of the Crude Grand Cuvée, which I think is like 3 years out. Anyway, probably delicious. It's at $230. Let's see, there's a Lallier 3 liter, which I thought was quite, thinking about party bottles for the holidays. That's not a terribly expensive one. It's $150 for a 3 liter, and it's a solid producer. There's some Cristal if you want to go big, Cristal Rosé if you want to go bigger.
02 Cristal Rosé, no less.
Yeah. Or no, 08 actually.
Oh, sorry, 08. Sorry, 08.
Yeah, so fantastic vintage. Yeah, I'm sure that's just phenomenal. And yeah, there was another actually Coteau Champenois, oddly enough, probably from the same collection, 2018 Roger Coulon, I've never heard of. And I don't believe it's sparkling. I think this is still wine. I should check. But anyway, that was kind of interesting. It's expensive, $125. So probably has a micro production, and I would imagine somewhat of a cult following. Some 12 Grand Dame, which I thought wasn't terrible for 150 reserve, and then the 96 of Clicquot Vintage Reserve at 4 of them for 125, which is fantastic stuff. Now again, 96. I remember this wine because it was so darn good years ago. I haven't had it in a long time, so I'm sure it's maturing quite nicely, but those are my champagne picks.
All right, let's head over to Jura, because we had a bunch of stuff coming from Jura this week. We had 26 lots come in from Jura.
Are those Pelican wines in new this week?
Yeah, Pelican. Yeah. We've got some Chardonnay, some Sauvignon.
These Labé wines always fascinate me because they just seem to people just go after them. They
all have bid. They like almost all have bids.
Well, yeah, and it's weird because there's Domaine Julien Labé and then there's Domaine Labé, different labels. One of them, they're both Chardonnay, but one of these days I'm going to look this wine up and see what the deal is because people just go after them. As soon as they hit the auction, they have bids every time they hit the auction. And they don't get bid up like crazy. They don't go up to like, double the reserve or anything, but they often get a lot of activity. So I'm very curious.
I mean, look, almost everything in Jura has bids. There's maybe out of the 26 lots, there's maybe like 5 that do not have bids currently. And it doesn't matter the producer. I mean, it's like, and we've got the Domaine du Pelican, de Labé, André, et Mireille Tissot, Henri Meyer. Well,
there's Tissot in this week too.
Yeah, we have 2 old bottles of Henri Meyer, a $25 bottle and a $30 bottle. The Cuvée sent just for $30 was $19.99, and a $94 Domaine de la Croix d'Herbois Rouge Vermeil for $25. So if you want some really old Arbois with that, Michel Gaher, Domaine des Marnes, Chateau de Montfort, Henri Meyer. I mean, there's just a ton of this stuff in this week. Let's jump over to Languedoc-Roussillon.
Yeah, let's cruise through because I realize we're already
a couple bottles.
We got a ton of stuff together.
Mas de Dumas Gassac.
Yeah, I saw those old Mas de Dumas wines. Interesting vintages, interesting wines. I don't have a lot of experience with older ones. I've had quite a few from the 90s, and that's about it. Frankly, not too many 2000s wines, but the 83 and 87 is very curious. 87 is, half the price as the 83.
I think those would be super interesting to try. The juice, I mean, I'm looking at the photo, but juice doesn't look too bad.
No, they last a long time. So seeing old ones is pretty interesting. You don't see them very often.
Let's jump over to Loire. We've got a few bottles coming in. There's the Domaine Didier Dagenau Poulet Fumé Cuvée Silex.
The Silex, there's a bottle of 06 Silex, which is pretty rare to see those pre-07, pre-08, I should say, bottles when Didier was still around.
$200, Some stuff from Domaine des Baumard, 95 Quarts de Chaume, and actually 295 Quarts de Chaumes. Domaine du Collier. I mean, look, there's some interesting stuff, I think, in the Languedoc-Roussillon, including some Petit Coteau from the...
in Loire, Languedoc. You just said Languedoc.
Oh, sorry, Loire. I meant Loire. Some 97 Domaine de les Petites Quarts Coteaux de Lyon. We have a bunch of those, which I thought was interesting. Let's move on to Provence. We have 8 lots coming into Provence, some Piberon, Bandol from 05, La Bastille Blanche from 14, the Rosé, and then some Domaine de l'Abbé, Côte de Provence, Clos Bélessé. We got a bunch of those in mag format. So those are going to be.
Yeah, I looked this up. I think it's actually rosé, that wine.
Is that rosé?
I think it's rosé. Yeah, Domaine de l'Abbé, Côte de Provence, Clos Bélessé. And they're all in magnums, and they're all older too, which is kind of interesting. Or most of them, right? Like it's a kind of a vertical.
Yeah, it's kind of like a vertical. And then should we jump and just quickly run through Bordeaux and Burgundy?
Yes, quickly.
Let's do fast. So look, there's a ton of like first growths coming into auction, like all over the place. 82 Mouton, just a ton. I mean, I'm not going to go through tons of Lafite and Cheval Blanc and Petrus and Latour.
Lacoste. There's
like, I mean, it's
phenomenal collection of like La Mission Préon back to 57.
I had that 57,
89 through most of the 80s. Chateau Lafite. There's like fantastic vintages of Latour, Magnum 95. There's a bunch of Léo Lascaux, half bottles, L'Evangile, Lynchbage, Malisco, Margot, Montbusquet, Montrose, Mouton. you name it, like through the alphabet.
Dude,
it's
55 Alsace, 89 Clinet, 67.
Bunch of Sauternes and half
a bunch of dude, 59
97. Yeah, Raymond Lafont for $21. I mean, like just smoking deal. 88 Rio Sec, $51. Don't buy 01 Rio Sec, buy 88 because it's a better vintage. And it's
59 Clemens, 59 Soudero, 67 Gillet. I mean, there's just like a ton of this stuff from the 40s, 50s, and 60s at really reasonable prices. You can get those for like $300-$400 for something for a 15.
Yeah, no, like fully matured. And like really fantastic colors too. I was looking at some of the bottles like when Rob was inspecting them, and there's 03 Decam. There's a case. Or I should say 12 bottle.
Yeah, so a 96 to Chem too, I think. And then like,
did you? The 03 just looked phenomenal. They I think they're going to drink better sooner than some of the earlier. And
they were really well priced too.
They're 03 Sauternes is a steal because they're it was a tricky vintage, but the wines are awesome.
The wines are great. And then the only other one I'll mention is that we have we have 3 of the 05 Aubryon Blancs for $7.15 a bottle.
Yeah, that's right. There's Aubryon Blanc and there's L'Arrivée Aubryon Blanc, I think, in this week too. Yeah,
right.
I think. Or is it La Vie Aubryon Blanc, which is horrifically expensive. The 94 is $280, and the 2000, well, for a non-first growth, if you will, white wine from Bordeaux. But anyway, I'm always interested by those because they have such a following and they're so good. But you could also find, what is it? Smith Lafitte Blanc, I think, is in this week. I found there were a couple.
I thought there's like every.
Yeah, Smith Lafitte Blanc 89. I thought was really cool because the color is amazing and it's $65, and a lot of time on it. Very mature.
Just, look, if you're a Bordeaux fan, this is your week. Like this is such a great week to.
Amazing amount of things. A 19 really Domaine de Chevalier Blanc. Also, that was the other one that.
Yes. Yeah.
The white is generally more expensive, and also I would say probably more interesting than the red one.
I feel like we could do like 5 episodes on this week's Bordeaux.
My favorite standout this week, which I will say, and then we can move on to Burgundy, is the Petit Cheval 3 liter. Very cool.
The 05
Petit Cheval 3 liter at $700. I literally had that on my. That's the last thing on my list. I was about to mention that before we move on. But yeah, I thought that was really cool to see that 05 Petit Cheval. Phenomenal. Yeah, just like crazy rare, large format. Like you don't see second label Cheval Blanc. It's very cool to see that. And so that stood out for me. That was my choice pick of the week, if you will.
And that concludes Bordeaux. Unfortunately, there's really nothing good in Burgundy to talk about this week. No, I'm joking.
Well, there's nothing good for under 4 figures. No.
Well, that's the thing is that
I'm just kidding. There's a ton of stuff.
A ton of stuff, but
this is for serious collectors.
This is a serious collector week for Burgundy. I mean,
Ligier Belair. Ligier Belair is just blowing it out the water this week. Every possible label I think that's produced. Well, I'm sure that's not the case. But Clos Vougeot, Echezot, La Romanée, and La Romanée, don't forget, tiny vineyard, not as celebrated as Romanée Conti, but right next door, tiny little parcel. Ligier Belair, the Count, I believe, owns the entirety of the property now. It used to be Bouchard and somebody else. Anyway, $5,700 for that 15 La Romanée.
Speaking of being next to DRC, we've got 8 DRC lots coming into auction.
Yeah, there's a new batch of Romanée Conti as well.
There's a bunch of Romanée Conti. And then we've got Domaine Leroy, like crazy, 14 lots of Domaine Leroy. And it's like a who's who.
Yeah. And the Maison wines too. There's also the Negociant wines.
There's a bunch of Maison Leroy wines. I mean, but it's all the way, it just really runs the gamut. There's a ton of stuff. Dujac, there's 12 Dujac lots coming into auction.
Yeah, again, also Domaine and Negociant wines. So you've got the pick of both, both labels.
Well, I actually picked out the 2020 Domaine Laflave Macon Verze, which was in auction starting at 55, has 2 bids on it already.
Yeah, well, I mean, for Domaine Leflaive, that's relatively that's very inexpensive. Very inexpensive. But I mean, it's Macon. It's Macon, so it's Cote Chalonnet. It's not, it's not in the Cote de Nuit, but still, it's gonna be. I'm sure it's gonna be fantastic. Also, 2020 whites. So far, my experience has been fantastic.
Yeah, too. I'm loving the 2020 whites out of Burgundy. I have my eyes on this 15 Domaine Ponceau Claude de la Roche Villavine Mag for $780. I thought that wasn't a terrible deal. 15 Georges Roumier Bon Mar for $1,800. I was looking at, and then the Roumier Moustanif for $12,000. I thought that was interesting, and I'm really curious to see where that one lands.
That's a serious wine, and it's kind of akin to Loire. They both have. I don't know. They both make one barrel or half barrel of Musigny every year, or even
So if you buy 1,000 cases of this is investment advice. If you can get
considering there's 25 or fewer, then
I'm just saying. I have my eye on this François Ravenel, the 18 François Ravenel Chablis Mont des Tonnerres.
Well, Jeff, I don't know why you're not putting bids on all of these. A lot of these wines don't have bids yet, so you should get going.
The open
get going, so you don't get outbid. You lost on the Leflaive.
Let me tap into my line of credit to get a second on my house to bid on this stuff. 15 Georges Murray Claude de Vougeot for $785. The 92 Henri Jaët von Romani for $4,600. I thought that was interesting. The Domaine des Lambrets, we talked about the Lambray, Claude de Lambray, $295. I have my eye on that. Already has a bid on the 01, Etienne, Sauzet, Pouligny, Montrachet, Champs Canet. 155 takes a 165 after a bid. The Lucien 14, Lucien Lemoyne Beaumar, one bid taking it from 260 270. The Domaine de la Vaugera, Clos Blanc de Vougeot.
That's your buddy JCP. That's his wine.
Oh, really? 19?
Yeah. He owns the Domaine de Vougeot. Yeah.
Wait, my buddy who?
JCP, man. Jean Charles.
Oh, yeah. So 3 bids is taking that from 80 to 88. And then I was looking at the 15 Graveau Claude de Vougeot, which has a bid taking from 265 to 75. Finish it out. Take it home.
I'll just pick a couple of rare ones because there are a couple examples in this week that we never see, or rarely, I should say. The 1990 Clos Lambray is very interesting because before the domain, I think, was owned, it was owned by Saillet, Domaine Saillet, which it's not anymore, as far as I know. Label looks very similar, but now it's a different organization than it was, but still pretty cool to see 1990 Lambray. There's also 2 versions of the Francois Lamarche Le Grand Rue 15. There's the Cuvée 1959, which is considerably more expensive. So it must be like a micro cuvée. I didn't even know that existed. I knew that Lamarche has the monopole of the Grand Rue, but I did not know about the Cuvée 1959. So that was very, very interesting to me. There's another little smattering of Georges Mouret wines in this week. There's some Jacques Prieur Musigny 15, which is a lot less than Roumier and Loire. Some Leschenot Claude de la Roche 15, which is veritably reasonable at $200 reserve. There's some Trappé 78 Chambertin, which look really, really cool. And there's also 15 Chapelle Chambertin, I should say. There's Dudénodin Corton from 1966 for $145. There's some Rouget wines, Croparntu included. There's some fantastic Fably. There's Clos de Bez, Les Ouvres Rodin, I think it's like another special cuvée of Clos de Bez, 2015 at $750. And there's also 15 Fably Musigny. Georges Nolak Grand Echezeaux, 15 snuck in, $335. There's some great Hubert Lignier wines, some Freddie Meunier wines, Jean Griveaux wines. There's some great Jadot wines as well. Drouhin wines also. There's Lucien Lemoine. So just a whole bunch of awesome stuff this week.
So much good stuff.
Lafarge, there's Lafarge Chardonnay. There's Merceau from Lafarge. There's Mio Camazé Richebourg, also Croparntu 15. So you got 2 different versions of 15 Croparntu. Actually, the only 2, I think. Montgerard Meunier, Clos Vougeot, and Grand Echezeaux. 85 Clos Vougeot for Montgerard Meunier at $245. I didn't think that was absurd considering the vintage and the vineyard. Some Pierre's Colin Moray Rosé for $36 right now. It's tasty rosé. I mean, that's might be a lot to spend on rosé from Burgundy, but still, it's a great producer and tasty wine. Groffier Bunmore 96, Catillard RSV, Romani Saint-Vivant, and Malconsor. Don't ask what the price is for the Romani Saint-Vivant. It's crazy. Regnault Von Romani as well. And there's some Théo Dancer wines, Théo Dulce, if you will. Alpestre Gringet, there's Gamay and Pinot Gris, so kind of off-the-wall varieties, but apparently some great winemaking there. So just, all kinds of incredible stuff this week.
And I think that just about wraps us up.
All right.
This has been Jeff McGurn and Paul Walker, WineBid's Finally Hammered, wishing you happy bidding. And cheers!
And cheers!